Hello and welcome back to the EMJ GOLD podcast, brought to you by EMJ, your number one open access destination for HCPs and pharma globally. Hi Jade, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Very well, thanks. How are you doing, Isabel?
Very good. Looking forward to sharing something slightly different today.
Exciting episode coming up because we're going to be sharing some exclusive insights into what HCPs really want to see from medical affairs in 2025 by exploring some of the recent content that we've published in-house here.
We are indeed. From a roundtable to an infographic to a recent podcast, there's plenty for us to dive into, I think.
Absolutely. To start off, I think we should start with a bit of scene setting. First topic that was discussed in your recent roundtable, Isabel, was what's a new thing that's made engaging HCPs harder this year and how are you dealing with it? What was the sentiment that you found?
So it was really fantastic to get 4 different perspectives in this piece, and unsurprisingly, information overload was the resounding conclusion. However, I do want to pick out some thoughts from Dr. Donatello Croqueta, who is the Chief Medical Officer at UCB, and he said one of the main issues is the growing complexity of evidence in an environment where clinical bandwidth is shrinking. A really nice way to put it, I think.
Yeah, expertly put. His suggestion for overcoming this, you may ask, is that teams need to focus on 3 key areas. That's co-creating evidence with HCPs and patients so it reflects lived experiences and real-world decision-making, designing protocols that fit into clinical workflows, and investing in tools that speed up data sharing.
Absolutely. 3 great top tips there. He also added that to earn attention and trust, we need to meet HCPs where they are, which is very true. And as much as pharma needs to gain attention from HCPs, it's important to remember, of course, that trust is the most valuable currency.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Bora Ademli, who's principal at ZS and friend of EMJ Golds, of course, his response to the next question ties in really well to that notion. You asked whether there was ever a gap between what HCPs say they want and what they actually consume.
Yes, and spoiler alert, most felt that there was, but Bora did go one step further and highlighted that even when HCP preferences are known, the industry doesn't necessarily always deliver on those preferences. To quote, he said, the industry has made great progress in terms of listening to customers, but yes, we don't always act on what they tell us.
Yeah, he explained that even though 60 to 80% of HCPs do prefer educational to promotional material, and it was 80% value independent, credible sources over pharma channels, pharma does often lead with brand-centric messaging.
Clearly there's a bit of a disparity there. He concluded his point, though, by saying listening to HCP stated desires for scientific depth, neutrality and personalisation, and observing their actual engagement behaviour, crucially, should help us close that gap. If we're brave enough to act on it.
If we're brave enough indeed. It's a really important reminder, I suppose. What's the point in asking HCPs what they want if pharma isn't going to be brave enough to actually act on those insights?
Absolutely. Great point, I think, there. I also really liked what Cecile Janssen-Villen said in response to that question too. She pointed out the role that format can play. So she said engagement with short-form content such as infographics, under 5-minute videos and plain language summaries is higher than with any other content type. I think the industry knows this, but there isn't always the first point of call when it comes to communicating those really complex medical insights.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It reminds me of a stat we included in our recent infographic as well, where we explored the rising demand for interactive content with HCPs.
Indeed, in the piece, we highlight a stat that the average person switches computer tabs every 47 seconds, which is very, very rapid. And however, what we also found was that when content is interactive, which for context means that the content could include clickable carousels, living percentages, dynamic data visualizations, the audiences stay engaged for 2 to 3 times longer than the average.
That was according to EMJ's own data as well, with this being a format that's proved, increasingly popular with our audience over the last year.
Absolutely. We do keep banging on about it, but for good reason. And don't just take our word for it either. This way of learning is something that Dr. Natalia Barcolina, who is the UK Medical Director at Syneos Health, also brought up in the roundtable interview.
She did indeed. She called it scrolly telling. She said that it's worked especially well for long form stories, transforming them into an interactive experience. It's because it lets HCPs explore those specific molecules or mechanisms without disrupting that narrative flow, she explained. So yeah, great way of putting it, I think.
Excellent point. And she also said that this approach respects HCP's time. while delivering that complex scientific content in a digestible way. So, yeah, I think it shows that clearly HCPs don't just want simplified content, they want it to be smartly structured as well.
Yeah, so right there. In terms of what specific interactive formats are resonating, I'd encourage you to go and check out the infographic. We rank case reports, articles, infographics, and videos. The results may surprise you.
Great plug there, Jade. But look, now we've covered the current landscape and the key opportunities to take advantage of. We have one last point to cover, and that's the future of how medical affairs may engage with HCPs.
So, Isabel, is there anything that really stood out to you from recent content we published, starting with the roundtable?
Yes, so if there's one common thread in that interview, it's that medical affairs must stay really nimble and rooted in what HCPs actually need, not just what the industry thinks they do. But they also spoke about metrics and the importance of ensuring the right things are tracked to make sure the right impact is being measured and made.
Definitely, yeah. I think Bora, Cecile, and Donatello mentioned it in the roundtable. The success of medical affairs isn't just about clicks or attendance, it's about actually changing behaviour, improving patient outcomes and sparking genuine curiosity among HCPs.
The consensus was that all of those things would become increasingly important in the future. And talking to the behaviour change piece in particular, Bora said this kind of metric is powerful. It translates engagement into tangible results. Croquetta also said something interesting that I'd like to pick out. He said monitoring referral patterns, time to diagnosis, and time to treatment initiation are specific indicators of success. So we could go into a lot more detail, but that's just a little snippet of what was said. Do check out the roundtable itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do feel like we have to go into the rise of AI, though. It's always going to come up. As we heard in our recent podcast with Deepa Chari, Head of Scientific Communications at GSK, AI will play a bigger role in how the industry personalises and delivers medical education in the future. She did note, however, that it has to be done ethically and in moderation.
Yes. And I think what stood out for me in Deepa's podcast was that she framed AI not just as a tool for speed and scale, but as an enabler. She talked about how AI can tailor content in real time, getting the right format, tone, and message to the right audience at the right moment. And yeah, of course, this targeting could be transformative for HCP education.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like how she was honest about its limitations as well. She put it as AI cannot generate knowledge. It's a tool that pulls from what we give it, meaning the role of human expertise is still going to remain absolutely central.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
Not yet. While it can help us move faster and personalise better, the responsibility will ultimately still sit with medical affairs to guide these systems in the right direction.
Absolutely. So, to sum up, I think looking ahead, the future of medical affairs is all about partnership, relevance, and ethical innovation. It's key to keep listening to HCPs, acting on key learnings, and delivering content that helps them change their practice in a more personalised way.
Absolutely, that's what really matters. But I think that's all we have time for this week.
Yes, a whistle-stop tour, but thank you very much for joining us on this special wrap-up of our recent medical affairs content. We hope you found it useful. We will link everything we've discussed today in the show notes, so you can check them out in detail after this.
Absolutely. Do join us next week, where we'll be back for another great episode. But until then, it's bye from us.
Bye.